and just the overview, and spend a little time on just various ways it can manifest. It's not just one way. Then I want to move over and talk about insight and just what we mean by it, why it's considered to be, an important thing, and there's different practices you can do a little bit about that. And then I want to bring it back together and talk about, so how does it relate back to concentration? Because it turns out there's a lot of different opinions out there about how they work together or not, and it can be confusing. So I think in the short time we have here, we could actually lay this out in my ideas. My thought, and I've done this before, so I think it's going to work, is we can get just kind of a clear understanding of a general sense of the landscape, so then you can find where you like to plug in on this continuum of mindfulness, concentration, insight, and of course the heart qualities. And then when that's all done, maybe I'll come back to the way I'm interested, which I mentioned, I think, at the beginning, of a way, one more way of what I'm trying to offer, where we actually want to synthesize or integrate mindfulness, concentration, insight, and the heart qualities as one seamless practice. So we're not saying, oh, are you doing concentration or are you doing insight? It's fine to talk that way, and as you'll see, but actually we're kind of just, some people will say, oh, Richard, you're a concentration teacher. I understand that because I've been associated with John in concentration for a long time. But I go, no, I'm not. And they say, well, you're an insight teacher. Not an insight teacher. Matter of fact, we specifically, our organization, it's not the such and such insight. I know you are. It's great. It's fine. There's lots of places insight. Didn't want that name in there. We're Metadharma Foundation because it has a certain connotation about insight. It's a good connotation. I'm not trying to disparage Edmonton Insight. I'm in an insight place, so it's all good. But you'll see what I mean about that. And what does that mean to have them be one? And then you can see it's out of interest to you. So I hope we can do that. All right. So if you were to stay with your breath, or whatever, we'll just say breath, keep practicing, keep returning over and over. With time, your ability, I forgot the most important thing. Let me back up. There's this word concentration. The word that gets translated as concentration is samadhi. And samadhi is both the Pali and the Sanskrit. Sometimes some of these words are different in Sanskrit and Pali. Samadhi, we translate it as concentration. Concentration is a terrible translation for samadhi. Couldn't have picked a worse word. Because it's got all these connotations in it in the English language is the problem. The word, but we're stuck with it because everyone uses it. So I'm going to continue to use it. Actually, from now on in this retreat, I'm going to just say samadhi. I won't use concentration anymore, but that's the word. It's an okay word as long as we understand what we mean. But sometimes people are throwing the word around, and one person's having a conversation about concentration and someone else, and they just don't mean the same thing. That's the problem with the word. It's nothing. It's an okay word. The word samadhi, the actual meaning, the etymology of the word is undistracted. Okay? Now, there's a lot of controversy about if you're doing insight. You'll see what I mean in a few minutes, and should you have concentration or not. But there's no controversy about being undistracted. If you use that understanding, the controversies just go away. No meditation teacher says, be distracted, right? So we can take this undistractedness as far as we want, and the more undistracted you are, it's better. So that's kind of the meaning of this word samadhi, concentration, undistracted. All right, now back to what I started with. If you stayed with your breath and kept practicing, you would get better and better about being able to stay with your breath. You would get more skilled. Your samadhi, your concentration would be growing. And if you kept taking it, you would get to the point, some of you may be experiencing already, where you're wandering away less and less. You're more undistracted on the whatever it is, say the breath, right? And if you stayed with that more, You would get very skilled at being undistracted. You would have strengthened that mental muscle. And you could get to the place where, if you really took it far enough, where your mind would never wander off at all. This word absorption comes in. You would be so immersed just in the one thing. And you could get to the point, if you really took it far enough, where you were so absorbed or so undistracted on the one thing, you stop noticing other things. You could take it so far that you wouldn't notice, you just wouldn't feel your body anymore. The body awareness would drop away because you're so undistracted on the one point. You get the idea? Yeah? You wouldn't hear sounds. You wouldn't feel emotions. And so I'm focusing on the aspect of samadhi that's the undistractedness. Along with that are all these other experiences I mentioned this morning. Calm, peace, lights, blissfulness, pleasant, expansiveness, however you feel, all that will be along there with you, and however it happens to unfold for you, okay? I'm not going to talk of, some of you have heard this term jhana, that's a particular, actually I'm going to pause here for a second. That's a whole thing about jhana. People make a big deal about jhana. It's defined in a very specific way in the texts. What I'm about to say here is a little controversial, but this is, you're going to hear from me. As a long-term jhana teacher, I'm actually not that interested in talking about jhana anymore, because samadhi is so much more, it comprises jhana and a lot more. So all the jhana stuff, I am interested in jhana, and we'll keep doing that. And I have to say I'm jhana because that's kind of what everybody, and we want jhana, and you do, it's good. There's many samadhi experiences, and I'm just going to name this a little bit here, that are outside of what we would fit in the description of jhana, that are profound. When that person had divine light enter their body, that doesn't really map onto the jhana definition that much, right? There's other stuff happening. People, I could tell you so many things that happen with people. So it's a big, big world out there. So I'm not going to get into jhana. That would be a special topic. It's a great topic. And if we had a longer retreat, I might do a whole talk on how it's defined, what we mean by it, and all that. But everything I'm going to say about samadhi here just totally you get all the jhana stuff you need, right? So just to mention that, because jhana is a word that some of you, by the way, some of you haven't heard, the word jhana, just a little aside, it just means to meditate. That's it. There are places in the suttas where actually it's a unwholesome jhana. A couple of places when the Buddha, have you ever seen some of these images, statues of the Buddha where the body looks like a skeleton? That's the ascetic Buddha before he got his final enlightenment, where he almost killed himself by starving himself and everything. And he said, it's quoted as saying, he was doing something called the breathingless jhana, where he'd hold his breath for a long time, almost killed him. But most of the time when you hear the word jhana, it actually refers to this wholesome good, 99% it's good jhana. The word and in fact, when the word jhana in Pali was dhyana in Sanskrit, it came into China, Chan, all the Chan Mahayana school. When it went into Japan, Zen. Zen is the jhana school. They don't know that, but that's jhana in Japanese. So that's kind of interesting about that stuff. So, all right, that's enough on jhana, because we're talking broadly. I'm going to use the word samadhi, which is the same thing. And what we're doing is we're getting all these interesting experiences that come along, and there's the undistractedness itself. They're not the same thing. If you took it far enough, you could get so strong in your undistractedness that you would get to the point where, this is taking it very far, let's just say that the accompanying experiences were bliss and light. There would only be bliss and light, right? You would not be complaining, all right? It's good. It's nice when that happens. It's really nice and has a lot of benefits that we may talk about, right? When that just being in those states can be, really healing in the nervous system, and a lot of things can happen. That samadhi that I just described, if you took it that far, has a few different names. Sometimes we call it one-pointedness. You're not literally on a point, but on the one thing, because you're not scattered around, you've brought your attention just to the one thing. So they'll sometimes call it one-pointedness. Sometimes it's called an exclusive samadhi. And the reason it's called, you don't have to, if you want to write this, please, a lot of you are writing, it's good. If you don't remember, you'll get the basic idea. So either way, and I'm not trying to sell you a book, but this is all in a lot of details in my book. So, that's kind of what the books were about. This is a little snapshot of the whole book. It's also sometimes called exclusive samadhi, because the mind your awareness is exclusively on the one thing, and it excludes awareness of anything else. So one-pointedness, exclusive. And the important point here is, if you take it that far, for you, the experience of changing phenomena is lost, because you're disconnected from the body, disconnected from everything. So if you're just in, for example, bliss and light, there's still a little change in there, but that's splitting hairs. Basically, you've lost connection with change because everything's become fixed. It's also called a fixed concentration, sometimes called fixed. Using the fixed, one-pointedness, exclusive. You get the idea on that? And there's a stopping. This is the important thing. There's a stopping. The stopping experientially, stopping the flow of change. So this is going to be important. We'll come back to that kind of stopping. There's another way that's very different, just as deep, but very different way that samadhi can unfold. This is where, okay, so I'm going to use the term, I'm going to talk about the mind. And I may have mentioned the other day, sometimes I use the term the mind. I'm being a little loose and sloppy with language here. I'm not going for a laugh here. I don't know what the mind is. Many parts, many aspects, so I'm just going to talk about the mind. And don't ask me to say what I'm talking about. Hopefully it will work. Where rather than the flow of change stopping, the mind itself stops, but other experiences can keep coming and going. You've come to a different kind of stillness. This is not called exclusive, this is called inclusive samadhi. You're so undistracted and present and clear, the mind is just as unmoving. That's a different kind of presence as all kinds of phenomena come and go. It's a different level of really being with things and seeing deeply into perceiving what's happening. You get the different feeling? The way, it's like this, there's a quote, I'm going to mess it up, but it's from Ajahn Chah, the famous quote, some of you have heard of it, called the still forest pool. And I'll get it pretty close. He says, make your mind like a still forest pool. And you get the idea, just when, if you've ever been there, no wind, it's just as clear as can be. That's the mind. He goes, you'll see all kinds of rare and wonderful animals will come to drink at the pool. You will see many rare and wonderful things will come and go, but you will be still. And then he goes on to talk about just, and then you won't be in contention with things. You'll know, you'll not be, anyway. So that's a different feeling than the first kind, where we kind of lost everything and we were just in the light and the bliss. These are, by the way, one's not better than the other. They're different. We want to understand them. Because on their own, if you just stay with the breath, you're going to peel off in one direction or the other on its own. And you could let it go that way. I'm not getting into the details of how to. This is getting a little ahead. That's what me or someone else would work with the details on that. You can also steer it in either direction. You're heading one way. There are specific ways to steer it. It's not hard because your mind is so concentrated that in whatever way you aim it, everything's going to go in with you in that way. You just sort of mentally can do it. So I'm not getting into a lot of the details of how to hear. It's highly individual, right? Okay. The way I think about it, I don't know brain science, so I'm going to use something. If any of you are neuroscientists or whatever, the image works, I think. This may not really be how the brain works, but I'm just using it as an image. Whatever brain centers there are that bring the mind to utter stillness, one-pointedness, unification of mind, unmoving, just that level of steadiness is the same in both of these kind of samadhis. In the exclusive one, we also quiet down all the additional brain centers that allow you to experience change. They're shut down too. Whereas in the inclusive kind, the mind comes to utter stillness, very deep, but those other brain centers can still activate. You can still feel your body. Now, at that point, the body's kind of a body of light and energy. It is different, but we can connect. So rather than the first one, we've disconnected with change. In this second kind, rather than being exclusive, I call it inclusive. It enhances connection with things because you're so powerful and deep. It actually enhances it, right? So that's just kind of the idea there. And when you have that, it's kind of like sometimes it feels like your mind is so powerful that it can turn it like into, I don't know, sometimes it can get very narrow and it feels like it's turned into an electron microscope, kind of, the power. And the other times it can be very vast and it's sort of like, I was going to say the Hubble, now it's the James Webb, it can feel like that. So there's a power of the mind that comes there. You could apply that to, like, as we talk about insights, for example, different things, or just self-knowledge or enlightenment, liberation, all that kind of stuff. Another way that I would differentiate between the two, and I don't mean any negative connotation, but the first kind, exclusive, it's a disconnecting. You're actually connecting with something more transcendent, but as far as disconnecting from ourselves. The second kind is profoundly connecting. And again, I know those words are a little tricky because disconnecting, well, that doesn't sound so great. We want to be connected, but it's just another way to think. Anyway, I'm spending a little time. You get the basic idea of these two flavors, right? Okay. So I'd like to set that aside now, and we'll come back to that and say something about insight. And then kind of flesh it out a little bit, and then we'll bring the samadhi back, and we can see how these different flavors of samadhi may or may not work well if you're interested in insights. I'll give you a little teaser. You don't have to be interested in insight. What? You can't say that? You've got to have insight for liberation. No. It's great, it's powerful, it's a whole tradition and path of practice. It's not the only way. Here in Edmonton, insight. So, okay, don't get mad, hang in with me. Don't throw tomatoes or whatever. Chocolate bars are okay, you can throw those. All right, what's this idea about insight? First of all, what do we mean by insights? There's the tradition and then what I would use in a more expansive. So traditionally, the idea of insight, well, first let me back up. To me, somebody else may say something differently. To me, an insight is anything we perceive, experience, understand, that gains some more awareness, knowledge, that opens up perceptions about how things are. You can have psychological insights, and that's not in the tradition, but it's important for those, and how that comes up will be different. For some people, get a lot of that. For some people, it's just not much of that happening. It's different. And it doesn't have to be liberating from a Dharma perspective, but used within Dharma, because think about, if you have a lot of, like back when I mentioned some of my early issues were around self-esteem. Well, What was that? I had a very strong negative identity, right? When I had psychological, or when I had those kind of healing, it kind of liberated from that kind of self-identity. Right? And by the way, using psychological language, then maybe you end up with a different kind of self, a healthy sense of self, which is still a self-identity. That's all right, less suffering. There's another way to do it where you just heal up sort of a negative, and you don't have to make a new identity. You can just, what is it like just to be open and freer or something? There's a whole world about that. So those are insights. The traditional view of insights are, we have, sometimes it's talked about the three characteristics, if you know about that, was in Pali, anicca, dukkha, anatta. Impermanence. We use this word suffering for dukkha. It's not a good word either. We're kind of stuck with it. It actually means unreliable. Things change, they don't last. And if you're clinging, then it's suffering because it's unreliable. The actual real root meaning of dukkha, the word dukkha, it means the wheel of a cart that's out of round. What happens if you ride on a cart where the wheel axle's out of round? Yeah, you get a bumpy ride. It's like that. That's dukkha. But suffering's okay. Impermanent suffering, and what we call no self. Also, I'm getting off topic, terrible translation. Doesn't mean no self. Bad translation, but we're stuck with it. In case you don't know, you got a self. You have a self. I cannot tell you how many people come to me and they'll want to say something happened to them, and they do air quotes. They say, something happened to me, with the air quotes, and I understand that. I totally get that, but it's not me, it's just you. It happened to you. It's not that you don't have a self, it's what's the nature of the self. And we say that it's a changing process. We can get into all that kind of stuff, and that's the whole point of it. There's a self, but we find out that we're not nouns, we are verbs. That's the idea of no self. But we'll call it no self because everybody says it. It's like concentration. We'll just use it. Okay. The idea in the tradition is, if you could really, really get it, a deep insight, or get it profoundly about one or more of these, like impermanence, you'd see there's nothing worth clinging to, and part of the mind would release so profoundly and deeply, and that would be the way to this, we talk about liberation. You could see, that's an understanding. And there's whole worlds of meditation built around that. The whole insight meditation, in Pali, insight with a V, vipassana, with a Burmese accent, vipassana, if you hear it that way, just so you know. Built around having these insights into these things so that we can deeply get it, and hopefully, ideally, the mind could let go, right? So that's the whole Vipassana world. And there's a lot of practices. I'm going to name just a few different flavors in just a few minutes about that, but I just kind of want to hang with this for a minute, yeah? I will give you an example of how you can have these traditional kind of insights, what happened to me once. I'm more of a samadhi guy. I actually don't feel like whatever in life. But wait, I got to back up. I'm throwing these words around. Liberation. What are some others? Enlightenment. Realization. Awakening. By the way, there's lots of other things we may be up to for our practice. That may not be what we're thinking about. We maybe have other goals, or maybe you don't think in those terms. It's just like, I'm just trying to suffer less, or I used to think in those terms a lot. I actually have had no big claim, a lot of those kind of experiences I could tell you, like you can have enlightenment experience, stuff happens, right? All I care about now is, as I move about my day, can I be more kind? Can I live in a way where my heart's closed less and open more, and I'm less reactive and more wisely responsive in life? That's not really liberation, enlightenment. It's a different kind of. So you may have your own. I say that because you'll have yours. I don't assume we're all up for the same thing. Another reason why we shouldn't all think we're doing the same practices, because we may not even have the same goals. So that's a little aside there. By the way, while I was on the subject, I tend to use the word enlightenment, realization, and awakening synonymously, and I use liberation. I think they're related, but I tend to use them separately. I'm happy to have a conversation offline about that. I'd like to talk about that stuff. So we can do that if you're interested offline. But we tend to mix these words up a lot. So, but the ideas for this liberation, if you will, what does it mean to be liberated? So we're going to have to leave that undefined for now. I'm kind of just put it out there. Maybe that's not a fair thing to do. What do we mean by being liberated? Well, one way is just our happiness and well-being not be at the effect of things, where we're more, comes from a deep place within ourselves. It's that cliche, right? Inner peace. It's kind of like that. That's a liberation. And then we're able to, I don't know if he's still alive, an artist named Richard Stein. By the way, this is what happens when you don't write talks. It can go like this, but I'm going to stay on topic, don't worry. Richard Stein, and I have one of his lithographs, a signed original one, and it shows these dark, jaggedy shapes, and then over it is a rainbow, excuse me, and then there's a bird standing on the rainbow, and it has a little writing. It just says, Zen bird rides a rainbow over the rough edges of the world. And I love that. And so it's kind of like that. That's kind of a liberation. Like the world's the world. Our bodies and our minds are what they are. All the things that are good and all the things that were a mess and all of that. And then how do we, of course, we smooth a lot of that out, and that's true, but we still are ourselves. That's sort of a good news, bad news thing. I should maybe tell you this too. Also, through all of this, what do you want, the good news or the bad news? Oh, I'll give you the bad news first. You do all this practice, spend all this, and you know what? You're still yourself. Now the good news. You do all this practice, you're still yourself. You feel the difference? Some of this may be just coming more authentically to just let ourselves be ourselves. Wouldn't that be nice if we could just really just be? It's so, it's tragic sometimes how for many of us we can, I think, almost be in an adversarial relationship with ourselves. It can feel like that. I think all of us for some of us a lot. And so maybe a lot of the liberation is, can we kind of liberate from that and just be, we don't have to justify it. We don't have to say, why is it okay or not? You are who you are because that's who you are. That's enough, right? Anyway, so this is kind of liberation, right? Okay. So the idea is if you can have these insights, part of your mind would really get it and you can let go. For those of you who are insight meditators, you look to see your practice. Do you see the benefit from it? I know many people, that's their whole practice, and you will see the benefit, right? I had, just to show you how it can be sometimes, I remember on one long retreat, coming out of the samadhi, I had this experience where, well, like if you look around here in the room, or some of you on Zoom, if you see the experience that you're having, and then if I ask you to pay attention, well, can you notice that it's changing? My guess is that most of you probably aren't automatically noticing that. You're just noticing what's happening. But if you make a point of it, you could probably know, well, now if I make a point of it, I can see that things are changing. But mostly you're just naturally noticing the things themselves. For me, it flipped completely around, and all that was coming to my awareness was change, just the actual fact of change happening. It's kind of odd to talk about it now. And if I made a point of it, I could notice the things themselves. It was just different. So that counts like, what's that? That's an example of just a profound insight into impermanence. It can be like, it doesn't have to get that, but it can be. So the idea, if the idea is we need to be in touch with changing experience in order to connect with and get the insights into change, right? Yeah. And if you believe that the way to this liberation is you have to have insights into change, and if you believe that samadhi is that first kind that shuts off access to change, then you can see why people would say if you do too much concentration, you can't do insight. That's the whole controversy of it right there. And you could understand where that could come from. That's clear. It's not complicated, right? So, and that's true. You can have that kind of samadhi and you will lose touch with changing experience. So we know that. If you do inclusive connecting samadhi, and oh, by the way, people who go to the exclusive where you can't feel change anymore will tend to tell you, oh, ours is the deeper samadhi. Not deeper. It just shut down all the parts of the brain, the inclusive, equally deep on the stillness, unmoving absorption, but we're just allowing the other experiences still flow through that. If you want to call it deeper or not, I don't know. But the actual ekaggata in Pali, the unification of mind or one pointedness is equal. You can see that if you were doing the inclusive samadhi, it would enhance your connection with change. Taking samadhi all the way that far. There are two different jhana systems out there, the disconnected and the connected jhana. So depending on what jhana you're doing, either it doesn't really match with traditional insight or it enhances traditional insight. You get the idea? It's not that's kind of the thing. So many ways, as many of you know, that insight is taught as a practice. Depending on the tradition or the different teacher, they'll give more or less emphasis to the samadhi side because everybody will want you to at least settle a certain amount, right? And get to a certain amount of being settled so you can really be present. And then there are some practices that may say, still stay with your breath, but other things come up, just let go of the breath, and you want to put your attention on changing phenomena, right? You'll hear that kind of talking, right? Pain comes up, an emotion, and that's the idea. You're connecting with change in that way. So a lot of flavors of this, but I'm just trying to say this would be familiar to many of you in the Vipassana world, right? This is your insight kind of practices. You're aiming the mind to connect with experience. Sometimes it's just bare mindfulness of what's happening. That's an insight practice. Or you're actually particularly looking for the fact of change in the experience. It can be like that. Same thing around dukkha and suffering. Like you start to actually noticing the suffering of clinging. You're making a point to notice these things. It's a big world of insight, right? So I'm not going to say too much more about that. Many, many different flavors. And so this is good news because for those of you who are drawn on the insight side, you have a lot of options. And just like the way I'm offering, it's like you get on the samadhi side, you get to find and feel your way and hopefully find the flavor of insight practices that works best for you. And then it will come very alive, as you know. Right, okay. So now I know I said that controversial statement about, I was kind of put a little dig at insight. I didn't really mean it that way. You want to not be a jerk and be inclusive and all that, but I actually am so sincere. I said earlier, it was so liberating to be able to really get it that all these different paths are the real deal, as long as you're finding your sweet spot. That's all that matters. So I'm not an insight meditator. I shouldn't say that because I've not so much. I used to teach at IMS. I've taught a ton of retreats at Spirit Rock, and this is what you do. But really, I'm a samadhi meditator, but I couldn't say it. But I couldn't say it because they all thought samadhi was that Visuddhimagga. If you don't know what that means, don't worry, there's a text. Disconnecting samadhi. And back in the day, there was just me and one or two other Librazing, there was just hardly anybody. We were the samadhi guys, so we were kind of, oh, you're not an insight guy. Not true, but you had to kind of, so I go teach Vipassana, and it's great, and I have appreciation for it. But what you find is there's more than one pathway to liberation. Insight's a pathway, as many of you know. It's a good thing you've got Edmonton Insight Meditation, this whole wonderful pathway. It turns out, this is controversial, but it shouldn't be controversial. I think it's because of my books, so people will sometimes come to me who are more samadhi-oriented, who've been doing Vipassana for many years. Every single person, there's a ton of them. I have some monthly groups with some of these folks, and I've just known many. Everybody who has gone deep into samadhi, without exception, really appreciates that power that it brings. You don't have to have samadhi. There's no have to. You're settled or not, and you work with changing experience, and it's totally equally as powerful. And if you can turn your mind into that power of the James Webb Telescope for connecting with it, actually supercharges the insights, because the absorption now is into the changing experience, not into the bliss of the samadhi. And this is a complicated thing, but a little bit. So you're connecting, you're more connected than ever. That's a way where samadhi is not disconnected from insight. And it can, if you want to practice in that way, can enhance the insight. But there's even more to it than that. There are other pathways to liberation, enlightenment, where I don't know if you can ever say you'd never have any insights, but it's a samadhi liberation, where the mind, many people find their minds go into more of an equanimity. And they wouldn't have said it came out of any insights. It came out of just steadying the mind, clearing the mind, and more of a samadhi-oriented, I don't know. And they find themselves in this profoundly awakened, liberated place, and you wouldn't have called it an insight path. So not only can the concentration, I guess I fell into giving a little sales pitch here. I didn't intend that, but not only can the samadhi enhance on the insight side, but it may reveal its own opening for you just by just calming the mind, steadying, having that stream of samadhi come more alive, and you just move in a place of an equanimous, non-clinging, not identified as self so much, heart's more open place. So the whole point is, and if somebody wants to say that's not true, that's all right. That's their path and their teaching. And if you want to practice in their system, that's their offering, and you'll find if it resonates for you or not. Totally fine. But I'm offering to see for yourself which of these flavors, and then once you know, it doesn't matter what some teacher says. Nobody can take away from what you know to be true in yourself. And it wouldn't matter what I or someone else says. The rightness of it will come alive. This is that inner teacher, or that inner blossoming revealing itself to you. And then you will know, right, your way. Whatever way it is of all these different ways. Okay, so that's kind of a way where we can bring, you can be pure insight side, and why people want to do something called insight, and you can totally get that whole tradition within Buddhism. You can see why on the samadhi side, that's a whole way, and because people have found their enlightenment and liberation there. We don't have to be criticizing each other and saying, oh, you don't have it, I really do. No, you don't have it, I really do. We just don't need that. Because none of us are qualified to judge that unless we're inside someone else's experience. And unless I'm claiming to have psychic knowledge of every being's mind, I'm just shooting my mouth off it. I don't know. So it's like that. Okay. There's one more piece. Even if we could even let, it's not only that the samadhi can enhance. Am I being too energetic here? This is a topic that gets me going. You can see I'm kind of all pumped up here. It's been a lifetime. I've been on the receiving end of a lot of hell, I guess. I still have PTSD. I need some somatic psychotherapy here. I'm only partially joking. Just by being in these samadhi states this is a whole big topic, I'm just going to mention it a little, has a profoundly purifying effect. And I'm just putting that out there as a statement, but you go into these states, and even if you went into that sort of what I'm calling the disconnecting, exclusive, going into those states, and people say, well, you're just kind of going in and just being in the bliss, but it's sort of like, I don't know, like, what is it when you put an oven on self-clean, and it gets really hot, and then all the stuff is, and there's just a little ash there, and it's totally cleaned off all the stuff that you couldn't even scrub it off yourself. It's like that. Although it's not the negative of feeling burned, but you know what I mean? It has a purifying effect. So there's a lot of benefits on the samadhi side that we may not see that's healing. However, there's also a lot of benefits if you don't emphasize the samadhi of how purifying that can be. Because actually, what I'm about to say may not be imagining for some of you. You come in here and you sit. You don't have the support. Actually, this is going on for some of you in this retreat. You don't have the support of samadhi. By the way, you think you're judging your practice because it's less than. Actually, you're doing the heroic journey, because when you got the samadhi, it's easy to support you. Oh, we'll sit here all day long. It's great. You're not having less than practice if you can't concentrate. To sit and be present with yourself without the support of a concentrated mind. Your body's killing you. All your pathology, I shouldn't say that, psychology's roaring up. And to sit in that fire, that is serious work, yeah? And who was that said about what does this mean? I mean, to bow to that. I mean that quite seriously. I've done a lot of that myself. I know what it can be. That has such a purifying effect. And if you never did anything but that, you can see over time, we want to do more because we want you to get the support of the good stuff too. But you can see how that would learning just to let go of your suffering and just to be with yourself, how profound that can be too. This is why all edges of the spectrum, from deep samadhi to not much emphasis on samadhi at all, are equally powerful. So it's not just feel-good, happy talk to say it's all good. Like, it's really all liberating and enlighteningly powerful. You get the idea about that? Right. And so that just feeds right back into even more saying the importance of finding our own unique way, right? So yes, okay, so there's all that. Slow down here, I've got one more piece. I really can feel the energy coming out of me, so I know that might be a little lot, and it'll calm it down, and I'll try to calm myself here a little now. There is a way to bring all these together. I'm going to offer it, because this is actually I'm doing two things here. I want to support everyone to find your own way, but I am offering the way. This is my style of practicing and teaching, where they're all brought together as one. How do we do that? Hopefully you've gotten this, but I can be more explicit now. What I'm suggesting is we find whatever practices that will help us strengthen the concentration side, whatever that is. And some of us, we're in the exploration trying to figure it out. Some of us are getting it, whatever. And we stay with that, and we just take that as far and as long as we want. And to begin with, we don't have to think of anything else at all. You just go with that, and you let that concentration go as far as you want, and let it go, and just as deep and far as you want to take it, right? On its own, without you doing anything to make it happen, as many of you know, there'll be all the times when you can't concentrate. Other stuff's roaring up. All the other stuff, you're on the insight side of the practice. Your present moment just dished it up to you, and you're there. So now, what is the present moment? I need to have all the tools and techniques to work with it, my mindfulness, my insight practices, and all that. And then it settles out, you can concentrate, you're back on the concentration side of the practice, and then you just go for it again. And what we find is by letting the natural cycles kind of reveal themselves, we naturally are flowing back and forth between the concentration and the insight side. They're different when we're on the different sides. They're not exactly the same thing, but it's one synthesized practice. So it's really, you get the best of all. I mean, it's not the best, because it is true. You get a lot of both. I shouldn't say the best, because I just got through saying if you don't have any samadhi and just how powerful that can be. So maybe I do have a little, I just revealed a little of my bias maybe. But you can take both of them very far. Just by letting the present moment, and then this is part of the learning, is how do I know and stay attuned in the moment to know what's happening enough to be able to not get caught and to follow it. And that just comes with experience, right? And then, of course, the mindfulness is in there through all of it. So we're getting the concentration, the insight, the mindfulness, and heart qualities. Again, you can either purposely take time to do certain practices that around metta, compassion, empathy type practices if you want. Or you can more the way which is great, and I recommend it. You can also more what I'm hoping we're doing here, where you're just bringing the best you can the field of metta in with you, there's many ways that can happen. Just to let yourself be is a tremendous act of kindness to yourself. Stop the battle with yourself if you can. I know that's easy to say. Well, just stop the battle with yourself. Oh, okay, I'll do that. Well, it's not so easy. But if you can, that's huge metta, just to let yourself be. So there's lots of ways you can bring the kind heart and the self-empathy in. And if you're not good at it, you just give it a try and it'll grow. Right? So you can bring all these together into one. So that's kind of my style of, and so I need a name. Some of you don't stir your mind up. People say, so I can't say I'm a concentration teacher. I don't say I'm an insight teacher. I can't say I'm a mindfulness, concentration, insight and metta all in one. So I need something. So if some of you articulate word masters out there, I need some help. All right. I know it's a lot. Part of it was I was trying to get through a lot of material in an hour, and I had to keep clipping along. So it can be like that. We would have spread this out more if we'd had a longer retreat. Yeah. So I hope that was useful. And if not, there's the, I don't know what you call it, the clothes shopping analogy of any teaching. It's like this. I'm not actually that much of a clothes shopper. Fortunately, not everybody I'm kind of coming from a place of privilege in the sense that I don't have to shop for my clothes because I'm not much of a shopper. So I don't really know, but I am imagining if you're in a store and you're looking at all the shirts and you find something interesting, you take it off and you put it on, you try it on. If you don't like it, if you like it and the price is right, you keep it. If you don't, you just stick it back on the shelf and you move on. It's no big deal. So for any teaching and offering, if it works for you, if it resonates, that's really great. And some of you it really feels nice when people, it is a good feeling. People say, I like what you're saying and it's working. It doesn't matter who comes here. It's not going to be a fit for everybody. So that's okay. You've heard it. You try it. Just move on. It's not a big deal. But if it's useful, you can, I hope it's been useful, you can take that on. And then how do you find your own place in the spectrum of hundreds or who knows how many practices. You just pick something. You just use your best feeling and try it on and see. And over time, it'll shift, it'll change, it'll come to know your home base through experience. That's how we learn anything. So, all right. So, thank you for your kind attention. I very much appreciate it. And remember, you don't have to remember all these details. I mean, if you want to, it's okay, but hopefully you got the basic kind of feeling for it. Yeah. And so maybe we just sit here together. This is 5 o'clock now. Someone will lead this sit before dinner. But just a few minutes before I end, maybe just, there might have been a lot of energy, coming, and it may have kind of felt good. Maybe it was too much or whatever it was, just to sort of connect with what's going on with you right now. You may or may not need to, but if you do, maybe there's some ways to let the energy settle. Use your breathing, something like that. Ground in the body more if needed. All right. Good. Okay. Last few minutes, we'll just do a little reflection. And of course, you may, if you want, you can just let these words be in the background if you'd rather just continue in practicing and however you've been. And if you wish, you could take a few moments just to reflect back on your day. And probably for many of us, right, there's a lot that happens in a day, all the ups and downs. And, if you had any times that it felt like it was flowing well and had a kind of a good feeling. If you had times where it was difficult and struggles in different ways, just whatever it was for you. And here we are, we've had, our second full day. That's a lot of practice. And you've stayed here and, hung in with it and really done the best you can. You may notice or have noticed or felt that that it's been really supportive to be able to do, it's one thing to practice alone by oneself, and that's fine, but also how powerful and supportive it can be to practice with, this Sangha that we've created. So if you have, as you reflect on this, if you have found it to be supportive, perhaps you can just, it may bring up some gratitude or appreciation for you, for the group, for others. There may be individual faces or people who come to mind, your fellow practitioners, maybe a general sense just of the group. And just as others perhaps have been supportive for you, your presence, you have been that same support. You're individually and part of creating the feeling in the group. That's the support that, even if you've not been aware of it, that you've been offering for others. So in a way, that's, everyone has sort of been a gift to you, if you will. And, your presence, you have been a gift for others also. And you could see how it feels if you reflect on that. Just notice it, perhaps for some of us, it might bring up a nice feeling that it does feel good to know that we can contribute in a positive way to others. You're not trying to make yourself have any experience, but you're just seeing what's the feeling. You're just reflecting. You could stay with that, or if you wish, you might see what does it feel like if you actually allow or send out this good feeling, the metta, the loving kindness, to the others here. Again, it could be some individuals, or you just let that good feeling kind of radiate out. And that might feel good just to stay with that if you want to do this kind of a practice. Sometimes people like to add phrases along with the feeling of just like wishing, may you all be happy and peaceful, those kind of phrases, as you just keep in your awareness just the group. Or it could just be the felt feeling, with not necessarily with the phrases. And then if you wish, you could allow your awareness to expand out even further, so it goes beyond, just our meditation hall here, out to the whole center. And there's all the nuns who are in retirement, and the staff, all the people supporting us. And it could even go beyond that into the whole local community, the whole town around us. And it's, you could keep expanding more and more this feeling of radiating out, beyond into the greater community, the whole world and beyond. And it's this sense of it's that idea, I think I mentioned yesterday, this idea, it's sort of like the sun in the rain, where the sun, it just shines on all. It doesn't pick and choose whether it thinks they're worthy or not. That it just, gives the gift of its warmth and light on all. And the same with the rain. It gives that gift of life and the rain for all. And so that's the kind of the idea. It's like, what does it feel like if we might, just a little bit kind of incline our minds to that idea of this open heart, and what would it be like to have a heart that didn't I know that's a big ask, but we start just where we're at, and just see how that feels. And then finally, to end, let us reflect and recognize that it is through the power of our good intentions, whether we're conscious of them or not, and our aspirations. That's what inspires us to our good actions. And it's through our actions that we are, really what you'd call a force for the greater good. How can we live and act and be in a way that creates less and less suffering, for ourselves, for others? And how can we deepen and actualize our good intentions so that we're a force creating more well-being, more happiness, again, for others and ourselves. And so to end, just more the formal dedication of merit. And you can see if when you hear these words, and you can keep within your own mind and heart. Perhaps there could be a feeling. You don't have to make anything happen, but it's a beautiful thing, wishing well for others, and so there could be a good feeling. It really is a good, beautiful thing, right? Wishing, may everyone, may all beings everywhere be happy. May all beings be at ease. May everyone, all beings everywhere, be peaceful. May all beings come to an end of suffering. So thank you all for your good practice today. And everyone here, I hope you know, sometimes we kind of can not give ourselves the full, we say, well, I don't know if I practiced that well, but everyone here, literally everyone here, not just as a nice thing to say, has practiced well. And you've done the best you can. And that's a lot, as we know. So just for some appreciation for being able to practice with you and share in that. So I hope you enjoy the rest of your evening. Further practice, probably for most of us, rest. Yeah, okay.